I'm quite happy to have this panel discussion because we are going to cover something that tends to be forgotten when we talk about cybersecurity. But in your talks earlier, it looks like it's one of the most important parts of it, right? The human element. So, for our first question, and I guess this is also for the benefit of those who weren't able to join us earlier today, what is psychological priming, right? What is it, and how does it relate to influencing user behavior in cybersecurity? So maybe I can start with the rose among the thorns, Irish.
Um, Thank you, Ma'am Christine. So, actually, I think that question is a good start to kickstart this discussion because some of us here might still be thinking what really is psychological priming or how does it relate into cybersecurity. So, to answer that question, what really is psychological priming? As also defined earlier by our speakers before, it's a technique or a phenomenon wherein one's exposure to a certain stimulus affects or influences his or her behavior um, or responses to the subsequent stimulus. So, for example, let's say a song has been released, and let's say the title is Multo by Cup of Joe. I mean, you guys are familiar with that, right? So, of course, the first time you saw the title, you won't have an idea what that song is about.
Right.
So once you've heard it, and then you will have an idea what that song, right? And then the next time you hear it, it's like you will be listening to it with an aligned emotion on what that song is about, especially if you can relate. So priming is like that. It's like preparing yourself mentally on how to react on that. So now, how do you relate that priming in cybersecurity? So I'll give you an example. For example, a common which is a phishing email. So whenever a user received a phishing email, um, hopefully not, no. But then if a user clicks on it, and hopefully that phishing email is just simulated, you will be sample process is you'll be redirected to a site, but that site is of course a safe site, and then you will just be requested to watch seminars on how does it work to improve your security awareness. And then for our cases, it's usually you need to answer some surveys if you really understand what that seminar is about, so that the next time you receive that phishing email, your behavior, instead of automatically clicking whatever link or attachment is in that email, you'll be able to you'll have that keen of details wherein you will be able to ensure that the email address of the sender is legit. So
Right.
stuff like that. So priming is basically priming is simple, but it's a powerful way of a building a security culture. So yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. Maybe Anup, anything you'd like to add to that one?
I guess the one of the largest phenomena that we saw around this psychological attack is obviously deep fakes.
Right.
That phenomenon, even though people didn't call it as priming, that literally was priming, right? Influencing your mindset, influencing your thought process, and it was quite pervasive. Now the challenge I think for all of us is that deep fake from just a picture of a person's face or whatever, it's now become video, and it's so realistic, it's hard to tell what's real and what's not real. And that's a major challenge, I think, and it's an evolving space, of course, in terms of how do you add digital assets that validates whether it's a real or fake. But I think this is an ongoing problem. It's like a lock. You will always have someone who can break the lock, right? And so it's going to be an ongoing challenge, I think.
Right. It's interesting you brought it up, right? Because we keep on thinking that we'll use it as a tool to protect ourselves, but in reality, there are guys out there. The threat actors are way ahead of us and are already using it against us. So it is quite high time that we do start using priming in our own disciplines, right? All right. So now they say it's different strokes for different folks, right? So should we be tailoring our priming techniques based on the roles, the demographics of our audiences. So is it supposed to be different for the staff, for executives? Maybe Nirav, what do you think?
Yeah, of course. So think of it as a muscle memory, right? Um, the simple way to explain priming is muscle memory. If you know how to ride a bicycle or a bike, right? That's gonna be, if you want to drive a truck, you need to adopt it, right? So the same way a CFO would have a different training compared to what a DevSecOps guy would get, right? A DevSecOps guy would need to see the typo spotting of GitHub URL. And we need to be detection focused in priming rather than prevention as well. So yes, definitely there is a need for a tailored priming approach, which can tailor for executives who has financial losses. And the biggest problem is in the bigger picture, if spear phishing, like a proper spear phishing would have been going through social media accounts, finding out what he or she does, and then they start attacking. And they just need to be right once. So yes, a newbie versus a mid management versus executive, it has to be different. There is no second thought about it. And at the end, the newbie needs to know the bigger picture as well. That's the whole point. Because one mistake, it can cost company millions.
That's right. That's right. Perry, anything you'd like to add to that one?
Hello? Hello? Oh, hi. It's okay. It's okay. So, with regards to, yeah, I would agree with the different approaches in terms of priming, no, for individual roles, because let's face it, cybersecurity space is quite a big space to involve yourselves with. So we cannot expect the rank and file to invest that much time and effort in terms of analyzing what affects them or not. No? Especially, well, we can allude this to jack of all trades and master of none. No? So we don't have any area of expertise if we will do it in a broader manner. So yeah, I would agree about going with a specific priming technique for each individual or each role.
So, do you have any top of mind recommendations? For example, like if you have newbies, maybe a certain type of priming technique would be better for them over others?
I guess they could start with the basic, I would say basic etiquette or manners when it comes to cybersecurity practices, no? At least on an individual level.
Right.
So that little by little, if they go above the ranks, so they can further enhance those etiquette in a form of decision-making functions.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else from our panel who'd like to add to maybe their insights on customizing, right? The type of priming methods we use depending on our audience. Yeah, Jed, go ahead.
Hello. So we have to customize priming strategies, right, and priming in general to different audiences because, like in my presentation, like different individuals fall into different categories or how they think, how they behave. So some priming strategies will work better for those different individuals than others. Let's say we're in a different team, right, and we have the same awareness training. And then you'll notice, oh, why is my awareness program not working properly? Or let's say my metrics is stale or it's low. It's because of the fact that some individuals accept those primes better than the other individuals. So that's how we try to differentiate on what kind of priming we'll use. So a good example, okay, also realistic incident, right? Or you could say almost incident is that there's been a lot of whaling that's been going on in Viber recently to a lot of bank VIPs. I think those in the banks here, especially at the C level, you actually know about this because all of you have been targeted, right? And those at the lower levels aren't targeted by Viber's smishing techniques. And the ones who are actually even doing the smishing copied the face and well, at least the face and the name of those board level members, for example. So what happens here is that you have to train these C level or this bigger execs that there's this thing happening, right? In your awareness, and in your awareness, you should tell them, hey, maybe you should look at the numbers more, even if your boss is talking to you, right? Maybe you should still verify, should implement zero trust, right? So that goes more than, let's say, other roles, or let's say if you're more into the IT role, you're getting more targeted also as well, because of course hackers want to get your admin rights. So you have to inject more primes for them because they're more high value targets. So that's one of the things that I also experienced in running the information security program of the bank.
All right, thank you, Jed. Now, earlier we saw a couple of in your presentations, right? The examples of priming techniques. You have tabletop exercises and stuff like that. But isn't it like isn't it just the same as all the other exercises we're already doing, right? Isn't it? But some people may look at it and say, it just sounds like another cyber awareness initiative. So I guess the next question here is, how does priming compare to standard cybersecurity awareness methods? Sure, go ahead, Jed.
So I can continue from my last
Yes,
discussion,
perfect. Go
right?
ahead.
Which is good. So yes, actually, there's no real difference. It's just that, like what I said also before, your traditional training methods is just a type of priming for a specific culture type. So what happens there is that, because our usual training methods, I notice, falls more on the hierarchy or the control type of nature. But not everyone and not all teams are like that, right? Some actually do better if we don't do our trainings that way. So example, I do an awareness training campaign, right? And then I have an awareness exam and annual onboarding, right? So what I would do is I would tailor fit it to the different units that I think this training would better suit. So for example, for your legal and risk compliance, it would be that regular training, right? Or awareness training, onboarding. But for, let's say, IT, for sales, I would inject more colorful graphics, probably give more adjectives that deals towards more of their what they do, right? It's more personalized. So the training suddenly is different, but it's still the same training program. Your how you frame it is different. The priming is different. But if you look at your documentation, it's still the same. Okay, conduct training annually for all the employees in the bank, for example.
All right, thanks, Jed. Oh, please go ahead.
I would like to add on to that. There are two more approaches which can be beneficial for priming. Is one thing is once we go through the training, every year is the same training. So gamification of priming is very crucial. If you start making it a game, everybody plays it on their mobile and get a certification that, yep, they understand a bit more. So with AI and gamification, and last thing, keep changing the content of priming.
I agree with that.
Of course, right? If you don't change the content, I myself get primed every year by my company. But it's the same questions, but fortunately Qualys keeps changing it. But rest of the industry should start making it more interactive, gamification, and keep changing so it doesn't get boring.
Yes, I also agree so much because in my experience in our secure coding tool, we actually do secure coding training as a game. We gamify it. You actually receive a reward afterwards. Or let's say if you're doing some phishing, right, and then you turn it into a game, there's an award for the team who clicks, the least overall. For example, if you want all your employees to wear IDs, for example, for physical security purposes, you would say that, hey, every week I will be awarding someone who's been wearing their ID every day to work. Because for other companies, that's only optional. Right? But if you want it to be rewarding for them, you could do something like that. But at the same time, they'll also remember that, okay, we're always being watched, right? Because they're saying that we'll award. How do they know that you're going to be chosen unless they know suddenly that, oh, he's always on the CCTV.
Philip, yes.
Yeah, to add to your questions, the difference between the standard or the usual training versus the priming, right? I used to deliver training before, okay? Cisco, Arista. So the usual training, you just attend and then just follow what's the instructor saying. but you're not being pressured. You just need to know what the instructor is presenting, or you need to just pick something. But when it comes to priming, you're adding something which is a psychological concept wherein you're being pushed to think more faster, accurate, and with results. So that's why priming is very important in cybersecurity because we're thinking of time. We need to act faster, but in more efficient way, right? So
Right,
because when you like spend so much time in just doing something that you cannot get results in a faster way, you're losing more money, correct? So that's why during my presentation earlier, before you have 21 days to detect, but nowadays you need to think more faster, accurate, so that you can execute in a lesser time.
Because I mean, in any crisis, right? Time is never your friend.
Correct.
So the faster we get to it,
Time is ticking.
exactly. And what I'm hearing is repetition seems to really be key to priming, right? But maybe just a question from my end is when is too much, and when is it not enough repetition, right?
I would say,
Perry?
given the idea that I just constructed because of the individual comments from my colleagues, no, yeah, in summary, I would say, in terms of repetition, psychological priming rather should not be a repetitive activity. No? So I can differentiate the two in terms of output. Like Jed said earlier, no? In terms of execution or process, it's pretty much the same for both. However, in terms of output, like Philip said earlier, no? The normal awareness training already has an idea built upon it. So it just gives you what the landscape is and what to do. That's it. No questions asked. So it pretty much kills the critical thinking part, wherein everyone can contribute an additional idea to strengthen further, which is the goal of priming actually. Wherein I would say the stimulus acts as individual building blocks that you can work with using critical thinking to devise your own approach to, let's say, cyber defense. And also contributes to some form of collaboration because since there's no definitive output as opposed to awareness training, you want to consult your peers on what you have built and just cross-check it with others. So basically, it gives an open-ended and non-repetitive way of developing things.
It's interesting. So it's repetitive, but not really repetitive in the way that we think that repetition is. And you mentioned it earlier. Still has to be some evolution in the questions we're asked, the scenarios, and so on and so forth.
I'll try to be quick. Go on. Look.
Sorry, go ahead. And
With the points previously about gamification and tailoring. If you tailor it to the target audience and you gamify it, then it doesn't appear as repetitive, and even though we are all bombarded with too much information, when it's gamified and tailored, I think then the retention becomes much more significant.
that's true. Nirav, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just one small thing. It's not about just smishing or phishing. I'll just take 30 seconds for a story, right? One of the biggest casinos in the world got hacked a few years back. Tailor machines were off. Nobody can play anything. Guess what? These guys, the people who are trying to do the bad things to us, they are like an organization. And the threat actor, they are specializing into wishing as well. The whole multi-million-dollar loss was because of a single phone call. They impersonated a IT help desk, and that's how they got in. So when we say different methods, we should start also thinking about wishing. That's also very critical, and the financial impact to that organization was huge because of one employee's mistake. So if we show that and train them on those as well, it's perfect.
All right, thank you. Now, we also want to look forward, right? And we did say that cyber threats are evolving. Now, with the introduction of AI, it's even getting scarier, for the lack of better term. So, with that, my question now would be: as cyber threats evolve, how should our priming strategies adapt? Let's start with Jed.
So first, I think that word is called counter priming. So because these hackers or attackers, they're also using their own priming techniques. That's why they do social engineering, and people fall for it because, like, for example, when you do a phishing attack, phishing, smishing, any of it, there's always some sort of urgency. They impersonate someone else. So that's part of it. That's why we do the counter priming to that. That the priming that these threat actors are doing. Of course, evolution in terms of AI. AI will help also in terms of how to detect those kind of behavior and also give us the counter prime for that. And another thing is, I think another thing about the future is to embed, aside from the awareness program, the whole information security program. Because you want to put it in all of your security architecture and engineering practices. Because which does not fall under training and awareness. So for example, I have all of the vendors here, right? All the principals, they'll have their own solutions. Now, how do I tweak it or configure it so they will give me the best prime that my IT teams will be able to react right away to certain threats? Like what I said a while ago, alerting. How can I make my alerts more colorful? How do I make it better or enhanced for my IT security teams to respond right away, to come up with the playbooks, right? So those are some of the things that we're seeing also right now that we can do.
All right, thank you. Maybe Philip, anything you'd like to add to this one?
Hello. All right. So we should adapt for the future technologies like AI. So the thinking must also be aligned to AI. That's why nowadays, as you can see from different vendors, we integrate AI to make our, let's say for example, in log analysis, since there are a lot of logs, people cannot simply do manual checking one by one. You have a million logs every day that you need to correlate to each of its devices. That's why you need to adapt as well to AI so that you can respond well at a certain, let's say, under pressure time. So the key word here is to adapt on the technology.
Right. Sorry, Nirav?
Yeah, the future is going to be AI fighting AI. That's a reality, right? We need to have autonomicity even for the priming, right? So the only, again, all the fellow colleagues, right, and everybody on the course. I think there is one concept of drift detection of your priming. So continuous new colorful things, as you guys mentioned, right? Perfect. But finally, there is also one more methodology, which is a controlled A/B group testing. So you prime half of the people in your company and you do not prime half of them and see the results. And that will give you so much intel to evolve into what works and what doesn't. So I think that's all I want to say. Yeah.
That's interesting. It's like having a placebo group and a group that's actually taking the pill for drug testing, right? Perry?
Yeah, I would say, well, dissecting what Jed mentioned earlier, no, in terms of practicing it through the technologies. No? So yeah, it's important to create a foundational priming technique first, wherein you develop it based on the on-hand information that you have. What the attackers are, or, well, what are the threat actors currently doing, what security controls or infrastructure you have right now. Then from there, create a solid foundation for your existing priming technique. And then from there, trial and error is a very beneficial way here wherein you practice now with the emerging technologies, the foundational priming technique that you have, and then from there, evolve those priming techniques as you go along.
Thank you. Maybe we have time for one more. Maybe Anup, anything you'd like to add further?
No, nothing specific. I think you guys covered quite a bit.
All right. Now, we do have some time for questions from our audience. Do we have any questions from our Slido?
All right. So as our moderator mentioned, we are opening the floor for some questions from the audience. So do we have a question? So we can go around and actually get your questions. I believe we have a question over there.
All right, let's go.
Okay, show of hands, who has a question? All
Well-
right, so all right, for those of you who are a little bit shy in asking their questions personally, we're showing you a QR code that you can scan and you can actually type in your question.
All right, while we're waiting for their questions, I have a question. All right, so Earlier, Nirav, you mentioned the importance of looking at it as a risk, right? Cybersecurity as a risk. So how could priming alter our users' perception of cyber threats in this case?
This is probably, again, I was talking very high level today. I'm a DevSecOps guy myself. But when I got coached into the risk management, right? We need to show every employee in the organization of what's going to happen if they click the link. So right now we do the trainings, but the bigger picture is missing. As I mentioned about the story of the casino, right? One phone call, millions of dollars were lost. So in cybersecurity risk perspective, we need to show them the full picture. So all the techniques which all our colleagues have mentioned are all valid, but we need to make every employee understand why are we doing this. So everything starts with a why, as Simon says, right? So yeah, I would suggest show the big picture. Only then they would realize the importance of priming. That's my
Right.
view, yeah.
Right, so it's not just something that you're pushing down on them, but there's a rationale behind it, right? Okay, we have a couple of questions coming up, so let me read the first one. What ethical frameworks should organizations use when deploying psychological techniques? Interesting. Would any of you like to take a crack at it? So, what ethical frameworks should organizations use when deploying psychological techniques?
Interesting on the framework, right? Because
Yes.
everybody has different frameworks.
That's true. That's
So
true.
I think I would go with what he said and what he's doing as a CISO, right?
Yes. I think, but those are culture assessment frameworks. So if it's part of psychology, then yes, these are, there's a lot of frameworks I discussed a while ago. And like what I'm vouching for is the competing values framework and Shine's three-dimensional framework combined to assess the culture and what kind of priming techniques you can use on those different cultures and those different levels, at those different levels. So yeah, I guess that's it. Really.
All right. Anyone else would like to add? Yes, I know.
Would say that almost every organization has an existing framework on how the company operates, on how the HR systems operate. Those existing frameworks need to be extended to what priming means for the company. So I think that's a natural evolution of where we are today. As a I don't know if there's any existing framework specifically around priming, but I think it's going to be an extension of what exists today.
All right.
I can add to that. I think the HR of each organization has already been doing these things. So as a cybersecurity professional and well also as a part of the information security office, it's better to ask them what they're using because you'll obviously notice it. Like for example, in the bank, right? I'm in the floor where all the IT people are. It's an open space because it's meant for collaboration. In the next floor, which is purely for other banking services, it's all cubicles. Why? Because they want you to focus and be in control. So you'll get a notice of the different techniques HR is using, even in the layout of the company. Sometimes you even have other floors that they turn off the aircon when shifts are over. Why? Because they're priming you to go home. Don't do overtime. So if you ask the HR properly, right? Like, oh, what techniques are you using? Maybe you already have an assessment that we can use to insert our primes for cybersecurity.
All right. So I've been notified that we're down to our last question. So we'll probably just pick one from those that are posted. Okay, let's look at the last one. So what will be the role of cognitive domain in shaping cybersecurity capability, both in individual and at the organizational level? Would anyone want to take a crack at it?
I think it's going to be AI. Everybody's talking AI. So either individual level or a organization level, we need to make sure what data is getting pushed into AI. So whatever the deep learning AI is doing and creating deep fakes and all the deep stuff, they already have a dark GPT which can create those simulated attacks very easily, right? So we need to invest in a technology which can bring AI to defend against that. And again, that too on a cognitive level, because it's all neural network in deep learning. So it mimics the brain anyway. It's just that we are not there yet. It's going to take some time. Still, we are on ChatGPT, DALI, and Bard, and Copilot. But as we move forward, I think we will have more concise AI to fight against the priming. That's my view. Again, I haven't seen it in action yet, but I think there are more experienced people than me.
Well, I'd be interested to see that in action, actually. Yes, Jed, then Anna.
I haven't also seen this yet at that level of AI and neural networks when it comes to shaping the capability of cybersecurity yet. I think it's still advanced for multiple companies to actually use these, since AI is actually new, right? And at least generative AI is new. All the other AI has been used even before. But I think one thing that can help, that's not from the cognitive domain, is actually data science can help a lot into shaping cybersecurity capability. Because if you know the results or the metrics, and then you can perform some transformations and visualizations, you'll better understand what's going on if your strategy is actually working.
All right, and Anna.
So I was just going to say, specifically to the point of data science, I read a piece that was very interesting. I mean, you're all familiar with what's going on in between Israel and Iran, and the analysts are trying to understand whether the U.S. is going to jump into it. And one of the analysts suggested that one way to track whether the U.S. government is going to jump into this is by looking at the amount of pizzas being ordered by the defense organizations across North America. The more pizzas that are being ordered, they're working on something pretty aggressive. And so, data science, that's the kind of social engineering / data science that could have real impact on the real world. So it's quite a scary thought.
It is. And with that, thank you very much to our panel for joining us this afternoon. And I hope everyone has gotten new insights on priming and how it's something that we might consider implementing in our respective organizations. So again, thank you very much. And I'll turn you back over to our host.
All right, now that's it for our question and answer portion.